Okay, it's my turn now for a few moments. This week, Parsha is Pinchas. And there's a lot going on that doesn't seem connected until you really, really read it and study it for a while. Pinchas becomes a zealot and is rewarded for killing a Midianite woman and leader of the community who are, shall we say, fraternizing. And previously, all the fraternization that was going on brought a plague upon the Israelites, and when he had done that with his passion and energy, it ended the plague. However, he did it in a zealous way. Israel fights the war then with the Midianites. There's a second census so they know who survived and who should get pieces of the spoils, and especially when they go into Israel. The daughters of Zelophehad, and believe me, I worked for a week on how to pronounce that, forced a change in the law of property inheritance. We'll get into that in a minute. Joshua was chosen to be Moses' successor, and the celebration of the holidays and the sacrifices were discussed. So now you know why I had trouble getting it all together, because it seems like pieces might have gone together, but then they didn't. So the two parts that really stood out to me were the story of Zelophehad's daughter and the concepts about leadership and the characteristics of leadership. The types of actions that the sisters took and the types of leaders that sought would only mold the future of the children of Israel. They really came together. But who we became, and even many things in the community today. And it's sort of like we got away from it, then we got back to it. It's really interesting because they're about to enter the land of Israel. There were many preparations to be completed, and that's why they took the census. How many were going into Israel? How many clans were there? How many family groups were there? However, the problem was when they counted the family groups, they only counted the male heads of family. Now, there were family groups, like the one we'll talk about, that had no male. The father died in the wilderness, and there were no sons. So what happens to them? There were five. They weren't counted in the census. There were five sisters: Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah, who recognized the situation, and they chose to actually take action. They would work together in this patriarchal society to challenge the status quo. Many felt that they were the first feminists and the first activists for this reason, when you think back to when it was. They worked together, unlike many of the previous siblings mentioned in the Torah: Cain and Abel, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, Rachel and Leah, and Joseph and all his brothers. What does this say about the sisters? We do not know a lot about them. And was one of them the leader of the group? Were they all together as leaders of other women or of the tribe? I tried researching just them. I couldn't find very much, other than many women today look back at them as the first feminists, and the first, because they really changed the law. When they came forward and stood before Moses, Eleazar the priest, all the chieftains, the whole assembly of the tent of meeting, the Israelite camp had been formed into tribes, and they all had their assigned spot around the Mishkan, where the tabernacles, the Ten Commandments were, in the middle, and the center was where the main authority figures were. And all of them were men, and they were high up on daises, and these five sisters were not called, they just went up. And you just imagine what it must have been like, the courage that it took, everyone looking at this small group of five women, and the sisters went to Moshe and stated their case. Their father had died in the wilderness, but he was not. Most of the men that died in the wilderness were part of the Korban's revolt. That came in previous chapters. We won't get into it today, but there was a revolt. He wasn't part of it, which is why their circumstances were so different. And also, there were no brothers. That's another reason why it was different. So they knew only one way their father's name would be carried on, and that would be if there was a piece of land to go with it. So they didn't take the easy way out of the way and marry somebody undesirable, which was one thing that other women had been doing. They went to go support it. And this, in a way, stumped Moses. Some of the commentators said God made Moses dumb for this. Others said that it just was so out of the realm of anything anybody had considered that Moses went to God and said, basically, what do I do? And what do we do? And the laws of inheritance were changed through working together. They didn't go up demanding, they went up explaining the problem. Looking at this section, we see that the sisters were logical and pragmatic. They showed their future was not predestined, or that God had left them. They realized they could take action. There's a message of hope in their actions. And as we face obstacles and challenges, they worked with the leadership to effect change. This is a seed of activism and feminism, many believe. To me, it also demonstrates Moses as a leader. He recognized that there were unique situations. He listened to issues. He sought solutions. Another major theme in this parsha is leadership, which Moses just did. What are the different types of leaders, and what were the characteristics of a good leader? In biblical times, there were three crowns, or types of leaders. There were the priests, the kings, and the sages, prophets. They're kind of lumped together. The priests and kings were part of dynasties. Their titles were passed from father to son. However, when the second temple fell, so did the dynasties. Who was left as leaders? The sages and the prophets. There is a one-sentence summary that's in Tract of Vote. Moses received the Torah from Sinai and handed it to Joshua, who handed it to the elders. The elders handed it to the prophets, and the prophets to the men of the great assembly. It shows how the leadership flowed and how it flowed to everyone. It wasn't just a central command. But Moses was concerned with who would succeed him. His sister and brother had both died. He knew he would not be going to the promised land. Who would come after him? He was worried that Pinchas, the zealot, with his passion and vigor, when I repeated myself, I'm sorry. He did end the plague. He was very popular. In a way, he was the popular candidate in many ways. But Moses was afraid that Pinchas would become the leader after him. Moses was worried that having a zealot as leader would cause all sorts of problems. An extremist may have his place in a community, but not as a leader. The Kotzker Rebbe wrote that Moses asked God that the next leader be a tolerant person, not a zealot one. Moses had hoped his own sons would be able to take the reins of leadership. However, God said no. They were not serious and did not really work for it. Even the rebel Korah questioned Moses about leadership and holiness. He said, "All the congregation are holy, and the Lord in their midst. Why then do you, Moses, set yourself above the congregation?" Clearly, Korah's goals were to challenge Moses, but his statement also indicates the egalitarian and inclusive nature of Judaism. There is a midrash about the time to choose the next leader. Moses calls God by a different name, source of the breath of all flesh. Moses appeals to God, recognizing the nature of human diversity. Moses requests, saying, "Master of the universe, the mind of each and every one is known to you, and none of them are the same. When I am separated from them by death, I ask that you please set someone over them who will be patient with each and every one according to their uniqueness. A leader who shall take them out and bring them in, and let the assembly of God not be like a sheep that has no shepherd. As a farmer lovingly tends his entire flock, the next leader of the Jewish people had to embody the trials and inclusiveness and responsibilities and the needs of the people. God instructed Moses that Joshua would be that leader. Joshua, who had sat patiently at Moses' feet and learned from watching and became the new leader, who took care of all the needs that needed to be done and went about his duties from light to dark. The hard worker Joshua would be the next leader. He learned to see each one individually. As Rabbi Lisa Greshkow wrote, "Inspired by God, we look generously in the eyes to see the uniqueness of every human being and our ability to unite them. That makes me think of our congregation in a lot of ways. We welcome, we recognize everyone as individuals, and it really is a meaningful piece when I really finally found something in this, I will admit, tough Parsha to find a personal connection to, but I did. So, you're staring at me. 586 for Aleinu, please. And as soon as Heidi shows me, we can rise, or you can rise and get ready. What? You can stand up. I just was checking. Yeah, let's move forward. Thank you. All right, you be seated. As we prepare for the Mourner's Kaddish, we can think about healing a broken heart. The death of a loved one leaves us wounded. Sometimes we fear we will never heal, but with time we do. Sometimes we fear the darkness will overwhelm us, but with time it lifts. We can help ourselves by speaking about a loved one, tending to their possessions, performing acts of loving kindness in their names, and teaching others the precious lessons of their legacy. We can help heal the hurt of others who mourn by listening to their stories, sitting with them when they cry, entering the world of their loved ones, and bringing them closer to us. As long as our loved ones are remembered, as long as they remain a part of us, they can never die. And this week, I'm doing the math, okay. During Shloshim, we remember Ethel Behrman, mother of Andy Behrman, Ann Campbell, mother of Mike Campbell, Florence Boris, mother of Karen Pfeffer, Joan O'Donnell, mother of Bill Price. During Shana, we remember Eugene Bugby, father of Martha Bugby, Rose Foster, mother of Andy Weitzman, Susan Rosen, mother of Michaela Rosen and Max Rosen, Cheryl Side, mother of Laura and Aaron, David Ferris, father of Emily Farley, William Thompson, stepfather of Grace Cooper, Ann Cutler, mother of Mark Cutler, Emmanuel Block, father of Abby Block, and the Yurtsites, the year anniversaries for, I checked the dates right. Al Bendisky, grandfather of Stuart Lipson, Herschel Engel, uncle of Ronald Vanuker, Alfred Gilbert, grandfather of William Gilbert, Stanley Levin, father of Audrey Vanuker, Rhonda Ratowski, sister of Ronald Ratowski, Marty Weishaupt, brother-in-law of Michael Levine. Does anyone have anyone to add to the list? Okay. Please turn to page 592 and rise. Nope, front page. 598. 98, sorry, 92 is the beginning of the meditations. I have trouble. My book has 2 sets of page numbers in it on top of this, which is my problem. Yours is 2? Oh, theirs says 2, so that's what's throwing me. All right, sorry. Yit Gadal v'Yikadash Shmei Rabbah Yamar Tivra Firate Yamlat Malchute B'Chayechon U'Yomechon U'V'Yachari T'chal Beit Yisrael Ba'agula U'Vizman Koriv V'Yimru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabbah B'Barach Le'olam Le'omei Olamaya Yit Barach V'Yishtabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitraman V'Yitnaseh V'yit Hadar, V'yit Halev, V'yit Halal, Shmei Dekusha, B'rechu, Le'elam, Mikal, Birchata, V'shirata, Tush B'chata, V'ne'emata, Da'amiran, V'yamar, V'yimru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu, V'yakal Yisrael, V'yimru, Amen. Oseh Shalom Yimromav, U'yaseh Shalom. Aleinu v'yakal Yisrael, v'yimru Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. And I was wondering who was going to do that. I have board member down.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And thank you, Sharon. I am Jim Buja, board member here at Temple Ex Gaiam, and on behalf of myself and Michael Black and family, and the entire board, Shabbat Shalom and welcome. And we'd like to thank Heather and Heidi for their donating their time and in preparation for tonight, and also for being our song leaders this evening. Beautiful job. While detailed information about what is going on in the temple can be found in a variety of places, that is the TV screen in the community room, the kitchen bulletin board, the tech website, our tech community email, I wanted to highlight this week's calendar with some of the upcoming events for you. Registration is now open for the temple trip to Israel in April 2020. Please see the poster in the lobby and the website, or talk to Rabbi Albert for more information. Registration has begun for a religious school. The Brotherhood Scotch, Bourbon, and Cigar Night will be Saturday, July 27th at 6 p.m. at Jonathan Swagg's home. Please contact Stuart Lipson for more information. Next Friday service will be Jim and Rosie and Mike Campbell and Joe Campbell, Mike and Joe Campbell, and with Lee as soloist. Remember, if you need a quiet community workplace, email the admin at the temple to find out when you can come by the temple. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Okay. And I'm sure. Okay, and we will have a closing song. Did we give them?
Yeah, they're on the yellow sheet.
It's on the yellow sheet.
Yes.
The door by door. We thought was appropriate for passing on the information on for this parsha. We have technical difficulties, hang on.
We are gifts, and we are blessings. We are His living song. We are hope, and we are healing. We are learning to be strong. We are words, and we are stories. We are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. Bedor, Nagi, Dorlecha. Bedor, we protect this chain. Generation to generation. Bedor, these lips will praise your name. Looking back on the journey that we carry in our hearts, from the shadow of the mountain to the waters that were part. We are blessed and we are holy. We are children of your name. And the words that bring us meaning, we will have the strength to say. Bedor, Nagi, Dorlecha. Bedor, we protect this chain. The generation to generation. Bedor, these lips will praise your name. Bedor, Nagi, Dorlecha. Bedor, we protect this chain. From generation to generation. Bedor, these lips will praise your name.
Now we will join together for the blessing at the end of the service, but for Yivarechecha, we're going to do it by singing it this time. So please rise and join hands.
Yivarechecha, Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav, v'yilecha v'yichunecha, Yisa
which things were with JNF and which things were with them. There was a discussion about Ellen driving versus, using public transportation, and an Israeli friend of Margot's convinced her that it was okay for Ellen to drive. She drives a stick already. And there are good roads in Israel now, and it would be safe.
Yeah, and his dad is actually also cheaper to rent.
Yeah.
Well, I was with her when she was talking to the AAA people. I was like,
Yeah, no, the problem was convincing Margot.
yeah.
What? Oh yeah, Margot wanted to do Uber.
More.
Yeah, she wanted to do Uber originally.
So, like, at the same time, like, that's going to cost money.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've been being there. Nothing happens until I get here, does it?